Valve is going to bat for gamers in a really cool way. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. I hope you had a better weekend than PlayStation gamers playing games, because the PSN was down for pretty much the entire weekend and people were pissed. I spent the weekend playing Hunt Showdown on my PC, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. I wear this hat when I play Hunt Showdown. I promise it helps. But in addition to that first topic, we're going to talk about how my favorite Steam Deck app just got an update, and then I'm going to round out the video talking about this deck accessory that's simultaneously very dumb but also kind of awesome. But let's jump into the first topic here. So I've been working out pretty heavily for 3 to 4 years now. I started out by lifting weights, and when I introduced cardio, my knees hurt when I run, you know, like most people who are in their 30s. So the way I do cardio is I walk on the treadmill at speed 3 at incline 10 for like 30 minutes to an hour, 4 to 5 days a week. And the way I pass the time when I do that is by playing mobile games. And I did not realize before I started doing that how bad the situation is for mobile games. They have a lot of free-to-play stuff, which I guess is fine because there are great free-to-play games on PC, but the key difference is the monetization. And one of the worst forms of monetization is games like racing games where you have a gas tank and you do a couple of races and then your gas is empty. So you have to either wait 30 minutes for your gas to refill, or you can pay money to refill your gas, or you can watch an ad to refill your gas tank. And you can do that up to like 2 to 3 times a day. And it just sucks across the board because it seems like they're doing you a favor by introducing the ad supported way to refill your gas or whatever, but it's really like stabbing you instead of shooting you. It still sucks at the end of the day. It's just a little bit easier to survive a stab wound than a shot wound. You know what I'm saying? Is that a bad metaphor? I don't really care. You get what I'm saying. But thankfully, when it comes to console and PC, there's always been a little bit of a wall in terms of that type of monetization. There have been a few games that have broken through, like I guess Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero. I think Asphalt 9 and Asphalt Legends Unite have the same sort of monetization as the mobile versions on console and PC, but you know, it's been a creep instead of a full flow. And thankfully, Valve is stepping in before that little leak turns into a huge flood of a ton of different bad games like that use that monetization practice, absolutely flooding the marketplaces of these devices. And I think that's smart that they're getting in early, because PC and consoles, they're going back to the handheld well, right? Like the Nintendo Switch opened the floodgates once again on handhelds. We've gotten stuff like the Steam Deck, we've gotten stuff like the Ally and the Ally X and the Legion Go S that's coming out. So when you have mobile type ways to play these games and access these stores, that's when the mobile game companies are going to start paying attention and start putting all of their crappily monetized games on all of these storefronts. The PlayStation Store is rife with this stuff. It used to be games that you could just start up and run through in like 30 minutes and get a platinum trophy. Now there's absolutely tons of shovelware on the PlayStation Store where like they'll call it War of Ragnarok, God of Destiny or something like that. So if you search for Destiny, it'll come up. If you search for God of War, it'll come up. If you search for Ragnarok, it'll come up. And they flood the marketplace with these types of games so that they flood the whole search term situation. And a lot of people get tricked into downloading these games. So the way Valve is kind of combating this is really cool. They just banned those games outright. They said, if your game relies on advertisements, like having to watch an ad at any point in that game to continue playing it, it is not allowed on the Steam store. It will be removed if it's flagged or reported by our users. And I think that's great. Now, usually it could become a slippery slope when you got a situation like this, but they have implemented ways to kind of not really get around it, but cover games that might have product placement. Like the original Death Stranding, they had a Monster sponsorship in there. So when you go to the rest houses, Sam can drink cans of Monster Energy. Technically, that's an advertisement within a game, but it's product placement. So that is clear under Valve's new rule. If, say, you went to rest in Death Stranding and they were like, okay, to recharge Sam's energy, you have to watch an ad for Monster Energy, that's what wouldn't be allowed in this situation. So I'm glad that they're putting, you know, caveats in place, because product placement or promotion of other games from publishers, that's in so many games that if you enforced it, you'd have to remove a ton of games from the Steam store. And that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to block garbage shovelware from being blasted in people's faces and clogging the whole search engine optimization of the actual storefront, which is exactly what happened not only to PlayStation, but the Nintendo Switch. Like if you go look at the Switch store, it used to be 1 or 2 games every week getting added to the eShop. And then eventually it got to the point where you cannot find a single good, normal normal game that isn't just full of crappy monetization or garbage assets because Nintendo took all of the limits off on the actual storefront. So Valve is kind of getting ahead of a problem that has plagued other platforms, and I think that's great. But the other way they're helping us out, I think, is a lot more interesting. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I'm kind of out on early access games. There are very few outliers like Tokyo Extreme Racer, for example. That's a recent one I picked up. But excluding the very small list of games I will play in early access, the reason I'm kind of out on the whole thing is because I've been burnt one too many times. You know, you buy a game in early access, the developers will update it for a while, and then eventually they'll either run out of money or they'll get bored and move on to something else. And then they'll just push out an update and say the game's done and it's fully released. Or they'll put the game out, they'll do like 1 or 2 updates, they'll collect the money they got off people when they released the early access version, and then they'll just disappear forever. So that's been happening quite a lot over the past few years. And the way Valve is combating it is a new little note that shows up in the early access box that lets you know if a developer has abandoned their game. Now, it's not going to show up immediately. Like if a developer takes 2 or 3 months between updates, you're not going to see a warning or anything like that. But once you hit the 12-month mark, where it's been over a year since a game has got an update, before you even purchase the game, Steam is going to tell you now that that game has not been updated in over a year, and you should probably think twice about buying it. And knowing that other console storefronts like the PlayStation Store and the Xbox Store are also selling early access games now, this should just be the norm across the board, man. I think there are situations where early access is good, like going back to Tokyo Extreme Racer. That game is optimized. It's like 80% done. 2 out of 3 of the chapters in the game are in the game. There's a full roster of cars. Everything that's going to be in the game at launch is currently in the game. They're basically just fine-tuning while they finish up the end game and stuff like that. Those games I think are totally fine for early access, which is why I bought it. And it's also at a slight discount beforehand. So it was like a game I was already going to buy anyway. So I figured, I'll try it out now and get a little bit of a discount. Other games that kind of are in the middle for me are stuff like Assetto Corsa Evo. They're quickly adding in features, which is good, but it's still on the line of being a little too bare bones for me to really jump in and purchase and play right now because it's unoptimized, it's buggy, it doesn't have full progression and everything like that. I get that there's people who want to jump in early, and more power to them because they're going to help optimize the game and help test it out before I eventually play it. But anything beyond those 2 types of games, I just won't play in early access. I can't deal with that situation once again, where you buy a game, you play it, you enjoy it, and then suddenly the developers take all the money they made and disappear and you're SOL. You can't even get a refund at that point, which really blows. I understand the defense in that situation, like you got your money's worth technically because the early access version might have been at a discount, but you shouldn't be releasing games in early access if you don't intend on finishing them. And I understand that a lot of devs go into it intending to finish them, but like if you're releasing a game in early access to fund the rest of your development, you shouldn't be releasing the game in early access. You should go look for outside funding, because there is nothing worse to me than selling a game to people, selling a product unfinished and never finishing it. I mean, AAA developers do that all the time now. They don't finish their games. They release them 80% done, then they take 2 years to finish them. But I guess in that world, this crappy world we live in where that's allowed, it's good that they go back and finish them. The worst of the worst are the ones that abandon their games. That just absolutely sucks. And a third reason I kind of tend to avoid them is because there have been plenty of situations where I played a game in early access and I really enjoyed it for like 5 or 10 hours, and then I got my money's worth. And then by the time the game actually came out and all my friends eventually picked it up, I was bored of it because, you know, when you get a full version of an early access game, they usually make you wipe your save and start over, and it's just a whole mess from top to bottom. So yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, it just rewards me more to wait for the game to be finished. Yes, I might have to pay a little bit more if I wait for that, but at the end of the day, I'm getting a more finished product, which is what I want. But yeah, that brings me to the second part of this video, which is about my favorite Steam Deck companion app, which is Deck Filter. Now, speaking of free to play stuff or free to download stuff on the iPhone, usually you will have to subscribe to actually use the features of those apps. That is the second worst sort of business model that I've ever seen on the App Store. You know, these apps that are like a step tracker, and it's like, oh, subscribe to Step Tracker Pro and you won't have to see ads, and it's like $10 a month. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. That sucks. Deck Filter, on the other hand, is one of these great apps that costs $4.99 to buy in, and then it doesn't have ads and it does exactly what is advertised. And the guy who makes it, Felix, is one of the coolest people in the Steam Deck community. So I think it's worth picking up on its face. But if you need to be sold more, the coolest thing about it is it lets you log into Steam, and then it'll load in your wish list. It'll load in all the games you already own. You can see all of your games in a nice list. And then when you click into the individual games, you can get directly to the ProtonDB page for that game, see how it's going to run on the Steam Deck. But even before you do that, they have the ProtonDB rating on the game's art, so you know if it's going to run on Steam Deck in the first place or not. You can also see the how long to beat information. So if you want a generalized guess of how long a game is, because how long to beat is never accurate for me, you can also see that right there on the game's little card. And it's consistently getting updates like the 1.9 version that I'm going to tell you about right now. I asked Felix to explain this to me, like how this works, and I gotta be real, I genuinely don't get it. But one of the biggest problems it had before was that you couldn't really utilize it with your actual Steam library unless your Steam profile was set to public, because it has to cache your Steam profile and read all your games, and it can't do that if it's private. Well, he's introduced a feature that allows you to grab an API code. So you go to the API website, it tells you how to do all this in the app. I'm not going to show it to you because you shouldn't give out your API code that it gives you, but basically you go to the settings of the app, click the link, and then type in the text field deckfilter.app, and it'll give you a special key. You punch that in, and once you do that, you're able to capture your library if it's private. He also implemented is there any deal? So if you want to see if you can get a game cheaper, like a key for it for Steam from an outside website, it'll check the entire internet and tell you where the cheapest place to get that key is. And overall, it just has a really good user interface. Like, I get kind of confused on phone apps sometimes when you get blasted with too much info. Everything in this app is dead simple from top to bottom, and you're supporting a fellow deck community person. Like, this guy plays on the Steam Deck. He's implementing features that people are directly asking for, and for the asking price of $5, I think it's totally worth it. I bought this app like 6 months ago, and I've used it probably once a day since then. Like, it's something that I never knew I needed, but once I got it, it was awesome. And this is not sponsored in any way. I just think it's a cool app, and every time it gets updated, I like talking about it. But anyway, that brings me to the third topic of this video, which might be the dumbest but coolest Steam Deck accessory ever. So this is coming from Deckmate. The Deckmate is kind of the same thing as the Kill Switch, which is like a case that has a mount bracket on the back of it for the Steam Deck. It's pretty cool. They sent me one back when it came out. I don't use cases on my deck, so it doesn't matter. And basically what it is a GoPro mount for the Deckmate. So you buy the Deckmate for like 19 bucks, you buy the GoPro mount for $9, and then you can use your Steam Deck with literally every GoPro accessory. So like the headband, you can put your Steam Deck on your forehead, which I don't know why you'd want to do that. You can do the chest mount, which is like a tripod kind of that has a band that goes around your chest, and then it has like this extendable bendy arm. You could lock your Steam Deck onto that and play it in bed, and it'll have some like resistance for you so it doesn't get too heavy in your hands. You could put it on a tripod, you could put it on a car. As long as it has a GoPro mount connector, you could put your Steam Deck on anything, and I just think this is cool. Out of all the accessories, I think the only one that's worth using is the one that kind of goes around your waist and gives you that long bendy arm. You know, like that's just cool. If you're laying on the couch, you can hold up your Steam Deck, or, you know, you could like get a mount, like a tripod mount with the bendy arm for the side of your bed, and you could connect a DualSense or something to your Steam Deck, and then you could have it like above your head, and you could play with a regular controller. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I'm sure you could 3D print this, but like for $9, if you already have a Deckmate, it seems like a worthy upgrade for it. And like for less than $30 for the entire package, it might be something you're interested in. So I figured I'd tell you because, you know, it's funny. Like, look at this picture. It's funny. The guy's got a Steam Deck on his head. What's funnier than that? But yeah, guys, that about wraps it up for this early week update here on Deck Ready. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.